Single dad saw everyone ignore the CEO's deaf daughter until he used sign language with her. Why did everyone ignore the CEO's deaf daughter? And what made a single dad choose to communicate with her in sign language? Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We're so glad to have you here for another touching story filled with unexpected moments and human connection. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest stories. Thank you so much for watching, supporting, and being part of our growing community. Now, tell us in the comments, what would you do if you saw everyone ignoring someone who communicated differently? And with that, let's step into the beginning of this unforgettable story. A small hand flashed for help beneath a chandelier, and 200 powerful people kept smiling. Ethan stood 10 feet above the ballroom floor on an aluminum ladder, tightening the last wire inside a flickering wall sconce while the Whitmore Technologies gala glittered around him. Crystal glasses chimed beneath a string quartet. Warm light rolled across black tuxedos, silver gowns, and polished marble that smelled faintly of lemon wax and expensive perfume. Ethan's temporary contractor badge hung crooked against his faded work shirt. He had been told 3 things before entering: fix the electrical fault, remain invisible, and leave before the keynote address. You're still on that circuit? His supervisor whispered through the radio clipped to his belt. Almost done. Good. Don't mingle. Ethan pressed the switch. The sconce steadied, filling the wall with amber light. Applause rose near the stage as Claire Whitmore appeared beneath a 20-foot company logo, composed and immaculate, speaking about connection in a world transformed by technology. Ethan descended the ladder and folded it quietly. Then he noticed the girl beside a white-clothed table. She looked about 9, dressed in navy blue, with a small silver hearing device behind one ear. Adults flowed around her as if she were furniture. Her eyes moved quickly from face to face. She touched 2 fingers to her chin, brought one hand toward her chest, then pointed urgently across the ballroom. A waiter glanced at her and set down another tray. "Sweetheart, your family's probably nearby," he said without stopping. The girl signed again. "Help." Ethan's grip tightened around the ladder. A woman wearing a donor badge stepped between them, lifted a champagne flute, and laughed at something her companion said. The girl tugged at the woman's sleeve. "Not now, honey." The woman gently removed the small hand and turned away. Music climbed toward the vaulted ceiling. Forks scraped china. Hundreds of conversations merged into a bright, polished roar the child could not enter. Ethan remained beside his tool case, watching her repeat the same signs with increasing urgency. "Help. Lost. Mother." An event coordinator hurried past with a headset pressed to one ear. The girl stepped into her path and signed with both hands. "Restrooms are down that hall," the coordinator said, pointing without making eye contact. The child shook her head hard enough to loosen a ribbon in her hair. She tried again, slower this time, shaping each movement with desperate precision. The coordinator was already speaking into her microphone. Ethan looked toward the service doors. His shift sheet required a supervisor's signature before he could leave, and temporary workers who crossed into guest areas without authorization did not get invited back. Rent was due in 6 days. His son's lunchbox still had a broken clasp because replacing it had lost an argument with the electric bill. "Ethan," the radio crackled. "Pack up." He reached for his tool case, but the girl's hands moved once more beneath the chandelier. This time, no one even pretended to misunderstand. They simply looked through her. One guest stepped around the child without interrupting his story. Another raised his glass above her head. On stage, Claire spoke about giving every customer a voice, while her daughter stood 30 feet away with none that anyone would acknowledge. Ethan slowly set down the tool case. The rubber handle struck the marble with a soft, final thud. He had learned those signs years ago, not for a job and not for applause, but well enough to recognize what everyone else had ignored. Lily was not asking for directions anymore. She was asking whether anyone in that crowded room could hear her. Ethan removed his work gloves, slipped them into his back pocket, and stepped beyond the velvet service rope. Then Lily looked directly at him and signed one last word. "Please." The orchestra's final note dissolved beneath the crystal chandelier, leaving silverware clicks and polite laughter floating through air, scented with roses and warm champagne. At the edge of the ballroom, Ethan lowered himself onto one knee, bringing his eyes level with Lily's instead of making her crane her neck toward another adult who would not understand. His hands moved slowly. "I see you. You're safe." Lily stared at him. The tight fists pressed against her dress loosened, one finger at a time. "You know sign language?" "Yes." "Really? Really?" Gold light shimmered across the polished marble. Behind them, Claire's amplified voice rolled from the stage while the electrical panel hummed inside the service corridor, but the panic that had shaken Lily's shoulders began to ease. She took one measured breath, then another. Ethan kept his hands where she could see them and waited. Dignity sometimes began with something that simple, not speaking for a frightened child, but giving her enough quiet to speak for herself. Lily glanced toward the shifting wall of tuxedos and evening gowns. "I lost Mrs. Bennett." "Your babysitter?" "She was beside me near the flowers." Her signs accelerated. People moved. "I couldn't find her." "I tried asking." Ethan looked briefly across the room. Guests clustered beneath white floral arches, servers threaded between tables, and security staff watched the exits rather than the 9-year-old crouched near the velvet rope. He returned his attention to Lily before the crowd could swallow her gaze again. "Who are you looking for now?" Lily pointed toward the stage. "My mom." Then she gripped the fabric above her chest and sighed. "I thought she left without me." Ethan shook his head once, calm and certain. "She's still here." Lily turned. Claire stood beneath a 40-foot screen bearing the Whitmore Technologies logo, delivering her keynote beneath a wash of blue-white spotlights. From the floor, her face seemed distant enough to belong to the screen rather than to the child trying to reach her. "Can you help me tell her?" Lily asked. Ethan could feel the cold metal edge of the service pass pressing against his hip. His supervisor's warning still sat there with it. "Finish the repair, avoid the guests, pack up." Yet Lily did not wait to be carried or rescued. She wiped both palms against her dress, stepped away from the rope, and chose him. "Stand beside me," she signed. Ethan rose but remained slightly behind her, allowing Lily to lead them through the nearest opening in the crowd. She raised one hand above her shoulder, then looked back to make certain he was still there. When he answered with a small sign, "Here," the first smile touched her face. It was not large. It did not need to be. On stage, Claire paused between two lines of her speech. Beyond the glare of the teleprompter, she had found her daughter in the crowd. Lily was smiling at a temporary electrician Claire had never seen before, and his hands were speaking to her in a language almost no one in the ballroom had bothered to notice. Claire lowered her presentation remote. Then the head of security turned, saw Ethan beside Lily, and stepped down from the wall. "Sir," he called, cutting through the applause. "Move away from the child." The security chief's polished shoes struck the marble in hard, measured beats, and the applause thinned beneath the low hum of the chandeliers. "Sir, step away." "Now." Ethan stopped several feet from the stage. The repaired spotlight warmed the back of his neck, while the cold metal of his voltage tester pressed against his belt. "She was looking for her mother," he said. "I'm taking her there. You were hired to fix the electrical system, not mingle with the Whitmore family." "I understand." "Then pack your tools and leave." Behind them, Ethan's supervisor appeared through the crowd, his jaw tight beneath the ballroom's white light. He pointed toward the service corridor. "Do what he says, Ethan. We need this account." 100 faces turned toward the man in a gray work shirt standing beside the CEO's daughter. Champagne glasses hovered near painted smiles. The air smelled of roses, hot wiring, and expensive perfume, yet no one asked Lily what had happened. The security chief extended an open hand toward her. "Come with me, Miss Whitmore." Lily backed away. Ethan saw her breathing shorten, but he did not reach for her. He lowered his hands where she could see them and signed, "Your choice." The decision belonged to her now. Lily looked at the security chief, at Ethan's supervisor, and then toward the stage where Claire stood beneath a wall of blue light. Without hesitation, the girl stepped forward and wrapped her small hand around Ethan's calloused fingers. The room changed around that grip. "Let go of her." the security chief ordered. Ethan remained still. Lily decides who stands beside her. You don't make that call. Neither do you without asking her. The chief's radio crackled against his jacket. A fork touched a plate somewhere near the donor tables, producing a bright, lonely chime. Then Claire descended the stage steps, leaving her keynote unfinished on the teleprompter behind her. Lily, Claire said, first with her voice, then again with an imperfect sign. Lily did not release Ethan. She pulled him forward until all three stood within the same pool of light. Claire glanced at his contractor badge, then at their joined hands. Did this man bother you? Lily's expression tightened. She shook her head so sharply that a loose strand of hair brushed her cheek. Then her hands rose. I was lost. Claire watched carefully. Mrs. Bennet disappeared near the flowers. I asked people for help. Lily pointed toward the servers, guests, and event staff now studying the floor. They walked past me. Claire's presentation remote slipped lower in her palm. Lily touched her own ear, then formed the next sign slowly enough that no one could pretend they had missed them. He was the only one who listened. Silence spread from the stage to the farthest tables. Ethan's supervisor lowered his pointing hand. The security chief shifted his weight, but Lily moved closer to Ethan and lifted their joined hands into view. I asked him to stay, she signed. I choose him. Claire's eyes settled on the grease beneath Ethan's fingernails, the worn cuff of his work shirt, and the patient stillness with which he waited for Lily to finish every word. Then she turned to the security chief. No one removes him. The command landed softly, yet the guard stepped back at once. Claire faced the ballroom, where hundreds of guests had celebrated a speech about giving people a voice while failing to hear the child standing among them. Her gaze moved from one silent face to another before returning to Ethan. Stay where you are, she said. I want to know why a stranger understood my daughter when everyone working for me did not. The ballroom's gold light trembled across abandoned champagne glasses while phones began vibrating against linen-covered tables. By the time Ethan retrieved his tool bag from the service corridor, a 12-second video was already racing through social media. It showed him stepping past the velvet barrier, kneeling beside Lily, and refusing the security chief's order to move. Everything before Lily took his hand had been removed. So had her signs asking for help. A caption supplied the lie. Temp worker uses CEO's deaf daughter to get close to Whitmore family. That isn't what happened. It's what people see. Then show them the rest. Ethan's supervisor stood beneath a buzzing fluorescent tube, his phone casting cold light over his jaw. From beyond the double doors came the muffled clink of silverware and the low current of voices feeding on a story none of them had bothered to understand. The supervisor locked his screen. The client account is worth more than every job we've done this year. Lily was lost. You crossed a restricted line. Because no one listened. The supervisor glanced toward the ballroom, then pulled Ethan's temporary badge from its clip. The plastic edge scraped across Ethan's work shirt. You're done. Effective now. Ethan did not reach for the badge. He only tightened his fingers around the canvas handles of his tool bag until the rough straps pressed white marks into his skin. You know that video was cut. I know what it could cost us. The difference between truth and convenience had rarely sounded so quiet. Outside, November air struck like cold metal. Delivery trucks idled beside the hotel, filling the loading dock with diesel fumes and a steady mechanical rumble. Ethan sat inside his aging pickup and opened his banking app. After rent, there would be $73 left. The payment for his son's inhaler refill was due Friday. His grocery list, milk, cereal, apples, chicken, lay folded beside a plastic dinosaur on the passenger seat. The phone rang before the cab had warmed. Dad, his son's sleepy voice came through a blanket of static. You coming home soon? Ethan looked back at the hotel windows, each one glowing like a room that would never notice a man disappearing beneath it. Yeah, buddy. Did you fix the lights? A pause settled between the dashboard clicks. The lights are working, Ethan said. I'll be home soon. Another notification appeared. The contractor's scheduling portal had removed every shift beside his name. Then an email arrived confirming termination for misconduct that had harmed the company's reputation. No hearing. No severance. No second chance. Ethan placed the phone face down, but its vibration continued against the console, small and relentless. Inside the gala, the same edited clip reached Lily's tablet. She watched once, then again, her brows drawing together as she noticed what was missing. Her plea, her choice, her own hands telling the truth. Claire was still demanding an explanation from her staff when Lily turned the screen toward her mother. The child did not cry. She signed one precise sentence, each movement sharp enough to cut through the ballroom's manufactured grace. They erased my words again. Claire looked from the false caption to the service doors through which Ethan had been sent. Outside, his truck pulled away into the cold, carrying a fired father toward a rent deadline he could no longer meet. Behind him, Lily lifted her hands once more, and this time, her mother watched every word. The microphone gave a soft burst of static as the next speaker waited beneath the white stage lights. Beyond the ballroom doors, winter air slipped through the loading corridor, carrying the smell of exhaust and wet pavement. Claire lowered the microphone instead of introducing him. The program is over. 3 board members stared at her. The event coordinator whispered, "We still have donors waiting. Let them wait." Claire stepped out of the spotlight and knelt beside Lily, bringing their eyes level. Around them, crystal glasses clicked uncertainly against silver trays, and the quartet's final note faded without applause. Claire turned off her earpiece, placed her phone face down, and opened both hands. "Show me everything." Lily did not replay the edited clip. She explained what had happened in her own language. Mrs. Bennet had disappeared into the crowd near the flower display. Lily had asked a waiter for help, then a guest, then an event coordinator. None had understood. Some had not even stopped. Ethan had. Claire followed every movement, asking Lily to repeat only when she failed to understand, not when the truth became uncomfortable. Lily signed that Ethan had given her a choice when security tried to remove him. Then she pointed toward the service doors and formed the last words slowly. They punished him because he listened. The head of security approached, his polished shoes tapping across the marble. "Ms. Whitmore, we contained the situation." Claire rose. "You removed the only person who knew what my daughter was saying." The footage showed what someone wanted it to show. Her voice never climbed, but nearby conversations collapsed into silence. She requested the head of security's incident report, the contractor's dismissal record, and Ethan's contact information. The event coordinator reminded her that Whitmore's largest donors were waiting for the closing reception. Claire removed the gold speaker badge from her dress and set it on the abandoned podium. "Tonight, my company celebrated communication while my child stood 10 feet away asking for help." A board member moved between her and the exit. "Walking out now will become the story." Claire glanced back at Lily, whose hands rested motionless against her blue dress. "It should." She took her daughter's hand and crossed the ballroom, leaving the stage lights burning behind them. In the quieter executive corridor, the carpet muffled their steps, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and printer toner. Claire called Ethan's supervisor first. "Reinstate him immediately." A pause crackled through the speaker. "That decision has already been processed. Legal told us not to reverse it without a review." Did anyone ask Lily what happened? No, Claire ended the call before another excuse could arrive. The old answer had become clear. Ethan had not approached Lily for access. Lily had chosen him because he had listened. Yet the firing remained, and Claire's authority could not erase it with one command. At the glass doors, Lily tugged her sleeve and signed, "Can we find him?" Claire looked at the dark driveway where Ethan's truck had vanished. Then she called the number listed on his contractor file. 1 ring. 2. Voicemail. "Ethan, this is Claire Whitmore. Lily told me the truth. What happened to you was wrong, and I will come to you, not ask you to return here." She handed the phone to Lily. The girl recorded 6 silent words for the message attached to the call. "Please let me speak for myself." Claire sent it, ordered her car brought around, and walked into the cold with Lily beside her. For the first time that evening, the CEO was no longer asking whether the damage could be contained. She was asking what dignity would require, and whether Ethan would open the door when she arrived. Cold rain ticked against the windows of Ethan's narrow duplex, mixing with the dry rattle of an aging furnace. The kitchen smelled of reheated tomato soup and the menthol rub beside his son's inhaler, while a past-due notice lay beneath the yellow stove light. When headlights swept across the blinds, Ethan folded the notice and slipped it under a grocery flyer. Claire Whitmore stood outside with Lily beside her, neither protected by an assistant nor announced by security. A black sedan waited at the curb, its engine humming in the 38-degree night. Ethan opened the door only halfway. "I heard the message," he said. Lily lifted her hands. "Will you listen now?" The chain slid free. Inside, Claire placed a cream-colored envelope on the scarred kitchen table. She did not sit until Ethan did. Lily watched from beside her mother, her palms resting against the cool laminate. "Your dismissal should never have happened," Claire said. "This is compensation for lost wages, reputational harm, and what my company put your family through." Ethan opened the envelope. The number had 6 figures. For several seconds, only the refrigerator compressor and rain in the gutters disturbed the room. Then he closed the folder and pushed it back. "No, it comes with no conditions. That isn't the problem. You need it." Ethan glanced toward the hallway, where his son's cough sounded once behind a closed door. His thumb pressed against the frayed edge of the table. The check could refill the inhaler, cover months of rent, and buy time no unemployed father could afford to waste. He pushed it another inch toward Claire. "If I take that money, tomorrow someone will say I helped Lily because there was a price waiting at the end." Claire's jaw tightened. "There was no price." "Then don't put one on it now." Lily followed their words through their hands and faces. Ethan turned toward her before continuing, making sure she remained inside the conversation rather than becoming its subject. "Your daughter didn't need a hero. She needed one adult who understood her. She should not have to get lost before your company decides that matters." Claire looked at the untouched check. "What are you asking for?" Ethan pulled the grocery flyer from beneath the notice, found a pen, and wrote 3 lines on its blank margin. "Certified interpreters at major events, accessibility training for staff and security, and direct communication options for deaf children. Use it for this," he said. "Not one gala. Every building you control. That program will cost far more than this settlement." "Good." The furnace clicked off, leaving the kitchen suddenly quiet. Lily stepped forward, read the list, and added a 4th line in careful block letters. "Ask U.S., not for U.S." Ethan nodded and handed the paper to Claire. By refusing the check, he had surrendered the fastest path out of his own crisis. By accepting the paper, Claire inherited a demand no private apology could satisfy. Her phone vibrated against the table. A board message filled the screen. "Emergency session, 8 a.m. Any unauthorized accessibility commitment would be challenged, along with her executive authority." Claire turned the display so Ethan could read it. "If I bring this to them, they'll ask whether Lily's account can withstand public scrutiny." Lily's chair scraped across the floor. She took the flyer from her mother, held it against her chest, and signed with deliberate precision. "Then tomorrow, they hear it from me." Ethan looked at the child whom an entire ballroom had treated as invisible, then at the bill hidden beneath her words. The money remained untouched between them. Morning would decide whether Claire's company could learn to listen or whether it would try to silence Lily again. Fluorescent light washed the boardroom in a pale, unforgiving glare, while the ventilation system hummed above a table polished smooth as black ice. At precisely 8 o'clock, Lily entered beside Claire, carrying Ethan's folded proposal against her chest. Ethan followed several steps behind in his worn work jacket, not as a beneficiary, not as an employee, but as the man who had shown a 9-year-old girl that listening could be done with 2 hands and a little dignity. A board member glanced at Claire. "This testimony should be given by an adult." Another tapped his pen. "We can review a written statement." A third added, "There's no reason to expose the child." The air smelled of coffee and leather, and rainwater darkened the edge of Ethan's boots. Before Claire could respond, Lily placed the proposal on the table and raised one hand. The certified interpreter beside the wall voiced her signs, but the choices belonged entirely to Lily. "You keep saying you want to protect me," she signed. No one has asked what I want protection from. The pen stopped moving. Lily pointed to the silent monitor, where the 12-second clip waited in the meeting file. Play it. The edited footage rolled first. Ethan kneeling, security approaching, Lily gripping his hand. Then the image ended exactly before her explanation. That is what people saw, the interpreter said for her. Lily removed a small tablet from her bag and connected it to the screen. Mrs. Bennett's full phone recording filled the wall. Lily signing near the flower display, guests turning away, employees walking past, Ethan lowering himself to her eye level, and Lily choosing to take his hand. No hidden scheme. No attempt to reach Claire. Just a frightened child asking for help until one stranger answered. Lily faced the board again. The video did not lie about Ethan, she signed. It lied by removing me. A chair creaked at the far end of the room. Claire's fingers tightened around the cold metal edge of the table, but she did not speak for her daughter. This time, she waited. Lily tapped the proposal and underlined the words she had added in thick blue ink. Ask US, not for US. Accessibility is not deciding what deaf children need while we sit outside the room, the interpreter voiced. It is giving us a way to enter, ask, refuse, choose, and be believed. One director leaned forward. Did Mr. Ethan tell you to say any of this? Lily looked directly at Ethan. He kept both hands visible at his sides. Then she answered. He did something harder. He let me decide. The room fell quiet. Not the neglectful silence of the gala, but the disciplined quiet of people who had finally lost the right to interrupt. Lily then slid the settlement offer across the table, Ethan's signature line still blank. He refused this, so children like me would not be ignored again. Claire lowered her eyes to the six-figure amount. Several board members did the same. The old accusation collapsed without shouting, and Ethan's kindness could no longer be recast as ambition. Yet the chairman closed the folder with a flat, final snap. Her account clears, Mr. Ethan, he said. It does not authorize this expenditure. He turned toward Claire as the wall clock clicked past 8:30. Withdraw the company-wide commitment now, or we call an immediate vote on your authority as CEO. Lily reached for her mother's hand, but her gaze remained fixed on the board. For the first time, everyone had heard her clearly. Now Claire had to decide what listening would cost. The wall clock struck 8:31 with a dry metallic click, and the ventilation system breathed cold air across the polished walnut table. Claire released Lily's hand only long enough to pull the microphone toward her. Call the vote. The chairman's pen stopped above his notes. Withdraw the accessibility commitment, and this ends quietly. No, Claire's voice carried beneath the white ceiling lights. It begins openly. She turned toward the head of security, whose badge caught a hard silver glare. You allowed an edited recording to define a deaf child's choices, then called that containment. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. His chair scraped backward. The sharp sound echoed through the room before the door closed behind him. Claire placed the company-wide accessibility proposal beside Lily's and signed settlement papers, certified interpreters, mandatory staff training, and direct communication systems in every Whitmore facility. Then she signed the authorization herself. My position goes to the vote with it. The chairman called for ballots. Paper whispered across the table. Pens tapped. Rain ticked against the dark windows. Ethan remained in the witness chair wearing the same contractor jacket he had worn when Whitmore dismissed him. No reinstatement letter waited before him. No check rested in his pocket. When the chairman announced that the preliminary count favored removing Claire, Ethan stood. Mr. Ethan, your name has been cleared, the chairman said. There is no need for you to involve yourself further. That is exactly why I should. Ethan declined the empty executive chair offered by an assistant and stayed beside Lily's seat. The certified interpreter raised her hands as Lily watched him closely. I'm not asking for a job, Ethan said. I'm not asking for compensation. And I'm not asking you to protect Ms. Whitmore from the consequences of her decision. A board member folded his arms. Then what are you asking? That you judge the decision honestly. Ethan lifted the blank settlement agreement. Yesterday, this company treated accessibility as charity and silence as consent. Today, a 9-year-old showed you the difference between speaking for someone and listening to them. The room cooled around the low hum of the vents. Coffee had gone bitter in untouched cups, and the damp wool of Ethan's jacket carried the faint smell of rain. He looked toward Claire, but did not soften the truth for her. She failed to see what was happening at that gala. So did everyone with authority in that room. Claire held his gaze and gave one quiet nod. But when the truth reached her, she did not buy silence. She risked control. Leadership is not never failing. It is refusing to preserve power with another person's erasure. Lily signed before the interpreter could prepare. He is not saving my mother, the interpreter voiced. He is telling you why her choice matters. One ballot changed. Then another. A third board member crossed out a mark with a slow stroke that sounded like sandpaper against the hush. The chairman counted again, his jaw tightening beneath the blue glow of the presentation screen. The motion to remove Claire Whitmore fails by one vote. No applause came. Only the clock, the rain, and Lily's palms resting flat on the table. Claire retained her authority, and the accessibility commitment remained in force. Yet before anyone could rise, Lily slid a blank training agenda into the center of the table and signed a question that the interpreter gave to the waiting room. Will they listen only when their jobs are at risk, or when children like me enter every Whitmore building tomorrow? By 9 the next morning, the rain had thinned to silver threads against the glass walls of Whitmore Technologies, and every chair in the training room faced a screen glowing with 2 words: listen first. The board members who had nearly removed Claire sat beside security officers, receptionists, event planners, and contractor supervisors. No champagne waited on the tables now. Only black coffee, printed accessibility guides, and the soft rustle of nervous hands. Lily entered first. A certified interpreter walked beside her, not ahead of her. Ethan followed with his temporary badge still inactive, while Claire took a seat in the second row rather than at the podium. Begin whenever you're ready, Claire said. Lily looked at the interpreter, then shook her head. She crossed to the screen, tapped a remote, and displayed the 12-second edited clip that had turned Ethan's kindness into suspicion. What do you see? She signed. The interpreter voiced her words. A contractor approaching the CEO's daughter, one director answered. Lily played Mrs. Bennett's complete recording. The room heard unanswered requests, distracted laughter, and the scrape of shoes passing a child who had been asking for help. Then Ethan appeared, lowering himself to her eye level and waiting for permission before signing. Now what do you see? Lily asked. No one answered. The air conditioning hummed over the smell of wet wool and coffee. At last, the board chairman removed his glasses. A room full of people who noticed you, he said, but did not listen. Lily nodded once. Then she divided everyone into pairs and handed them cards bearing simple signs. Help, lost, mother, wait, safe. Executives fumbled. Guards hesitated. Receptionists washed mouths instead of hands. Lily corrected them without apology, moving fingers, wrists, and lines of sight until the room began communicating in silence. Ethan did not take over. When a manager looked to him for the answer, he pointed back to Lily. She was no longer the child waiting to be interpreted by strangers. She was teaching powerful adults how to meet her where she stood. Claire then signed a halting sentence she had practiced overnight. I should have made this normal before it became a crisis. Lily adjusted her mother's hand shape, then completed the sign with her. Across every Whitmore facility, the new program went live that afternoon. Certified interpreters on call, visual emergency alerts, direct video communication, and mandatory accessibility training led by deaf consultants. Ethan accepted no settlement and requested no favor. Claire offered him a permanent position overseeing accessible facilities, with ordinary pay, written qualifications, and no ceremonial title. He read the contract beneath the cool white lights, then signed it because the work mattered, not because anyone owed him. His first paycheck covered groceries, rent, and his son's inhaler refill. Before the meeting ended, Lily approached Ethan and signed. They heard us. Ethan glanced around the room, where hands once raised to vote against her mother were now carefully practicing how to ask a child what she needed. Not yet, He signed back. But they're learning. Lily smiled and turned toward the people waiting for her instruction. The first time Ethan used his hands, he helped one frightened girl feel visible. The last time, he stood quietly beside her while she taught an entire room that listening was an act of respect.